All right, everybody, we're back with another reaction, discussion video with Pally's video here, the Otzdarva Effect. Let's get into it. I'm curious to see, we've reacted to other Pally discussion videos that he's also put out before. And we will also have those linked, or you can check the channel for it. But let's get into it.
Hello everyone, my name is Pally and I'm an OG 2016 DVD nerd who mains Trapper and Bill, but I may also enjoy a wee bit of the singularity from time to time.
Yes.
You're probably wondering why it's taken me so long to release a new video, and truth be told, I'll be completely honest, I had some IRL stuff go on with the beautiful East Coast weather that can't seem to ever make up its mind, but I also had to make sure I was wording this video very, very carefully because I don't really script my videos. Today I'm going to be talking about something I've started to affectionately refer to as the Otzdarva Effect. And when I say I needed to word this carefully, what I mean is I need to make sure and make it clear to all of you right now that this isn't something exclusive to Otzdarva himself, and no part of this is his or any other content creator's fault, nor have they done anything wrong. Otz is just the biggest name and the most recognizable name in the community, and to be honest, the Otzdarva Effect just has a ring to it. But the truth is, this applies to every content creator or influencer with even a semi-sizable following. And yes, I am fully prepared for the comment section to be filled with nerds who didn't watch until the end of the video, tearing me into shreds, thinking I'm talking trash when I'm really not. Anyway.
I can kind of, just off of the introduction alone, I kind of have a general idea of what maybe is going to be discussed. I think it could potentially be talking about maybe certain metas that get added in, or maybe certain things that sort of get brought to the forefront that may need to be changed, maybe because of certain like metas that get brought up. So like the syringes, for example, that we discussed that in another video. All of a sudden those kind of like sort of came in, and we see a lot more ever since Hens had sort of put a spotlight on it, like, or that combination we saw with dramaturgy and finesse. If it was, I don't know who popularized that, but I think that potentially could be the topic. I'm not too sure. I have never seen this video, but that's like my sort of hypothesis, estimation. It could potentially be that, but I'm not sure. But I kind of can guess that maybe it could be. Now, would you guys in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with that idea that, is it really the content creators, like, sort of, I wouldn't say fault, but like due to the content creators, like how, like bringing attention to certain things, does that shift the meta at all? Let me know what you guys think.
Anyway, so what exactly is the Otzdarva Effect? Well, to be honest, it's just influencers being influencers. I know, what a crazy concept, but let me explain, because it's more nuanced than that, and it can be seen as problematic by a lot of people. One common occurrence of the Otzdarva Effect is when a content creator says something or makes a video about something, and no matter how controversial their opinion is or how out of context their words were taken, all of a sudden nobody else is allowed to have a different opinion because my favorite content creator has a huge audience and everyone knows who they are, so they must be right. And do keep in mind, it's not the content creators that are saying this. It's some of the people that watch them. It's something that I call parroting. You'll be talking to someone on the absolute dumpster fire that is DBD Twitter, and the millisecond you show any sort of resistance or differing of opinions to anything they say, even in the most respectful way possible, they whip out the old, well, actually, Otzdarva said, or, well, actually, Hens said card, and just start metaphorically slapping you in the face with it like it's the raw fish of supreme superiority and justice. That's a nice.
Well, I have to say, I did not expect that this would be the topic. I honestly thought it had something to do with the meta changes that occur when certain content creators bring out, like, or bring to attention different like meta per combinations and things like that, like we mentioned before. I think even gift of pain leverage, I think it wasn't meta, but it was interesting to realize that they can be put together. But two very defining meta changes that I've seen shift was the syringes, because I feel like they weren't really used as often until that tweet was popularized by Hens, and then like Hens' tweet, I should say, had gotten popularized and therefore brought attention to the syringes, which in turn made going against syringes even more common than it already was. And the dramaturgy finesse as well. I'm not sure who popularized that, but I do think that that also became part of the meta because that was brought to the forefront of everybody's mind. And I thought it would have been that topic. It turns out that the topic is a completely different thing where you're trying to bring up points and they will reference a content creator and say that, hey, they said this, so therefore I'm right. To sort of use that as like some sort of evidence to back up their claim, which I did not see coming. And I will say, I haven't personally seen that. I don't really go on DBD Twitter at all, so I really don't know. But it is interesting to think that even that occurs too. You know, considering that like the bits and pieces I'm picking up from each reactionary video talking about DBD Twitter, it's like insane. Just to see what comes out of it. So here we are. Now we learned something new.
It's mental image for you. In any case, we have all experienced this. Just the non-stop parroting from people who usually don't even understand the fundamentals of the conversation they're having, using a content creator's opinion as a seemingly bulletproof crux for their opinion being infinitely correct. The amount of times I've had survivors bring a map offering for Gideon's meatpacking plant when I'm sitting here trying to play Trapper, and if I so much as ask them why they brought the map offering or even dodge the map offering, to this day, 2 years later, I get told, well, Otz says it's a killer-sided map, when that's not actually what Otz even said. They strip away all the context just so they can be immune to any sort of criticism. I'll do you one better, and you'll probably laugh about this. Lately, I've had people come into my chat or my YouTube comments, and as a Trapper main, I talk about how low Trapper is on any killer tier list, which is actually an opinion I think is objectively correct, if anything, just because of how outdated his power is, just to tell me, well, I heard True Talent say Trapper is better than Huntress, so that's just false. And let me tell you, as someone who has spent the better part of 13,000 hours...
You know, to be honest, two things. One, I actually never saw that video by Otz that talked about Meat Plant being killer-sided, but wasn't Gideon Meat Plant like reworked at some point in the game's lifetime? So wouldn't that sort of change because of that? I mean, that was 2 years ago, so there have been myriads of changes, literally tons and tons of changes that have occurred from that point that the video was posted all the way 2 years later. So how could that still remain true 2 years later? That doesn't make any sense. Then the next point being that True Talent said that Trapper is better than Huntress. So that's wrong. It's like, well, no, that, you know, as I've also mentioned too, the point that we just brought up, changes occur to the game every few months or so, right? Like even less than that. There's usually a lot of changes that occur over the course of the time. So whenever he said that the game probably shifted again, and maybe that opinion doesn't stand true anymore. Maybe he shifted his opinion. But even so, objectively speaking, I would just have to disagree with that point entirely. Trapper doesn't have the range capability, and does not have the flexibility that Huntress does have. And that's just from an objective standpoint. Like Huntress has range, has the capability to hit through different angles and areas and orbitals and other things like that, different playstyles as well, which objectively means more fun. And then Trapper is more of a setup killer that you're going to have to work very hard to in some maps to actually get value out of your ability. So I would just say, objectively speaking, untrue.
Hours playing Trapper and doesn't have a shred of love for Huntress. Not sorry. I'd love that to be true, but unfortunately it just isn't. But of course, none of my experience or my knowledge means a damn thing because big content creators said otherwise. What it all boils down to is this. Creator has opinion and endless amounts of parrots hide behind that opinion like it's some sort of religion that can't possibly have any flaw. And I'll say this right now, I've heard Otzdarva himself say he doesn't like that people use his name this way, and he hates being blamed for controversial changes as if they're all a direct result of something he spoke about at some point. And I sincerely do not believe that people like Otz or Hens or anyone else think they're right all the time and that their opinions are bulletproof. I'll even take that one step further and say I'm pretty sure no one would be more willing to hear other opinions than them. However, believe it or not, that is only one of the most common occurrences of the Otzdarva effect. If that wasn't enough for you, let's move on to what I would say is the other most common occurrence of the Otzdarva effect, and I would argue that this one is actually something that's become a big topic of conversation in recent weeks. Now let me ask you this. Can you think of anything in Dead by Daylight that, for all intents and purposes, was really, really strong, but because you didn't see it everywhere or because people tended to use it in the most inefficient way possible, it really didn't seem like a big problem? It could be a perk, a combination of perks, an item, an add-on, a tech, really anything. And then one day, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you start to see it everywhere in every single game you play, and it just...
This might be what I was mentioning earlier with the meta sort of shifting because of a content creator that's very popular, sort of bringing attention to those things. And so I think now we're at the part where I was talking about, which is what I thought going into the video, I thought that would be the topic. And to answer what he was saying, like I mentioned before, syringes, dramaturgy, and finesse. Two examples I would say of like things that I didn't really see that often personally, and then sort of started to see it all the time after its popularity. So, you know, because it got brought to everyone's attention. So, we'll see.
This becomes increasingly boring and annoying to go against. In small doses it seems fine, but in larger doses it can drive you to a state of absolute mauling. But then one day, you go against your better judgment and you log into DBD Twitter and you see that it all started because a known content creator posted a video or a tweet or just a clip of it, and now everyone's losing their minds over it, which usually comes in the form of one group of people saying that this thing needs to be nerfed and another group of people saying if XYZ content creator hadn't opened their big mouth, no one would have cared. But then you stop and you think about it for a second and you realize they could actually both be right. One classic example of this from years ago, which many of you may not even know about if you weren't around before mid-2022, is the old dead hard for distance tech. You see, before patch 6.1.0, all the way back in summer 2022, dead hard was pretty much a completely different perk, with the only similarity being that you pressed E to activate it. Back then, instead of giving you endurance, dead hard used to give you iframes so you couldn't be hit. It used to take away your collision with other characters so you could phase through the killer or your teammates, and it used to give you a pretty sizable and quick dash forward. And that last bit with the dash is what ended up being a huge problem. You see, no one realized the full potential of old Dead Hard until a certain few content creators, many of which don't even make content anymore for DBD, started showcasing that Dead Hard's ability to dodge hits wasn't actually the best way to use it. The best way to use it was to get a little extra distance so you could make it to a pallet or a vault. The problem with this was, to use it for distance, it took place in a situation where the killer wasn't quite close enough to hit you yet, but they were still close enough where you wouldn't make the pallet or vault, so you would use your Dead Hard dash to make it to the pallet or the vault and extend the chase artificially. There was no real counterplay.
Yo, that is pretty cheeseball, I ain't gonna lie. Holy moly. Can you imagine if that was still in the game now? Like, how would you even be able to counter that? I think maybe you could try to maybe mind game it, but even then it's probably one of the most ridiculous, which in my opinion, Dead Hard is still very ridiculous even now. But to see that it was even more ridiculous back then is shocking, but not surprising. I did used to see old clips of DBD, and I would see old Dead Hard, but I didn't think it was... I didn't realize, I guess, the full effect of it. I kind of just shrugged it off, ignored it. You know, I was like, oh, okay, this is old Dead Hard. But now that he kind of frames it in that way, I just realized, no, that's pretty cheese. Meaning that Dead Hard has always been a pretty cheeseball perk since it's been in the game. So that's interesting to see. A little bit of some history there.
For the killer outside of playing a specific handful of killers or running a perk. But number one, running a perk to counter something shouldn't be a counter, and it's not a counter. You shouldn't need a perk to counter something. And number two, sadly, 90% of the killer roster at the time just had to accept that the chase was extended and there was nothing they could have done to prevent it. It could even be used to dash right over Trapper's bear traps because of the iframes the perk provided, which, as you can imagine, made Trapper even more hell than he can feel now sometimes. It became such a big problem back then that it was so ingrained in the survivor meta that you basically had to assume every survivor had it, because for the most part, every survivor did have it. It had a higher pick rate than Windows of Opportunity does now, if you can believe that. And what made it even worse was many survivors built a reliance on the perk, to the point where when Dead Hard was given its endurance effect, many survivors at the time seemed like they just weren't as good in Chase without their Dead Hard. The fact is, for a long time, that version of Dead Hard carried players. Of course, they adapted.
Arguably, it continued. Dead Hard continued to carry a bunch of players even after that, and even after the nerf again, continues to carry survivors even now. Kind of goes to show the strength of some perks, I have to say. And speaking on Dead Hard specifically, it's pretty bad. I still think it's really badly designed. I still think that it rewards bad play. And I do think on its own it's still quite powerful when used in positions where you do have the upper hand, and then they're able to just kind of pop it up and get away scot-free pretty much. Doesn't feel good to go up against. And also kind of like it also kind of sucks depending on the killer you play too. If you're playing Chucky specifically, Dead Hards and Endurances can hurt really badly, as well with the current patch, obviously. With the cooldown being currently in the current patch at the time of recording is, I believe, is it a 14-second cooldown or something like that? So very long cooldown. So if you land it, they just endurance and fly off, which means you don't get your down. It's the same thing that like with Siptics and syringes, where it's like you kind of need your down and you just can't get it. Now obviously you're gonna have the people say, oh, but you can counter it, like you can mind game and try to get them to whiff. But you know, depending on the level of the survivor, or just because of your positioning, or just whatever have you, it still just doesn't feel good to go up against. You know, so I wouldn't say that that it completely absolves it from being unfun to go up against. It's still kind of just doesn't feel nice. But yes, it does have some sort of counterplay to a certain degree.
Eventually, but that's how it was at the time. And again, the thing is, until content creators started showcasing this absolutely busted use of the perk, no one was really complaining about it because it wasn't as common as it eventually became. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's not good enough. Maybe you want more recent examples of the Otzdarva Effect. I could go on and on about the whole syringe controversy stirred up by a harmless tweet from Vile Hens just a few weeks ago. That's a great example.
You know, it's funny, I actually made a video about this exact topic, and that'll be either annotated on the screen if I can, or remember to do so, or I'll make sure to link it in the description, or maybe I'll put it at the end screen, whichever have you. But I actually spoke about this topic as well. And yeah, no, it's interesting to see that I was able to bring that up in the conversation, because that's exactly what came to mind when it came to syringes. Like I personally never, like I seen it was pretty common, but not as common as I would think it is now. I think it used to be every couple of matches. I would say maybe out of 20, maybe I'd see it 5 times, or maybe 7 times, just to be safe. So about almost half the time. After that, now I'm seeing it on like every other game, if not every game. So I think it increased the popularity of it, whether it be due to people being curious to try out the add-on, and to test for themselves to see if it's as strong as they claim, or it's because they know it's very strong, and then they will try to use that, and it's just not fun to go up against.
I can personally attest that while I did see syringes in my games fairly often before that tweet, after that tweet and the responses he posted afterwards telling people how to use syringes the most efficient way possible, it's become almost guaranteed to have at least 2 syringes every game. And I wish I was exaggerating, but that's basically what it is now after that discussion. It wasn't.
And lo and behold, we have another person here that just literally said exactly what I was saying, where it was pretty common, but now it's like extremely common. So it was crazy. And like I've said, I discussed this in another video, so if you want to see that, that'll be linked somewhere, and it's on the channel.
It wasn't a massive deal before, but now it's just making games absurdly annoying and boring, and now something needs to happen with syringes. And as you can guess, a lot of predominantly survivor-only players are not happy about the negative attention, even going so far as to say survivors can't have anything, which is just objectively not true. Another recent example I'll bring up is a video h.s.x published back in November showcasing the super fun perk combo of Finesse and Dramaturgy. And no, I'm not trying to target h.s.x, these are just two really recent examples. h.s.x wasn't the only one, of course, but he is one of the biggest ones, and to date the video has nearly 140,000 views, at least at the time of recording this.
And wow, I called both of these metas right off the bat. I did not know that. I did not see that coming. But yes, I guess I was right. And now we know it was h.s.x, unfortunately, so, which is not h.s.x's fault. You know, he's a content creator, just like myself. Like, we want to bring new content and new things to people's attention, just for people to have fun or try new things. Now, for this to become the meta, that's kind of insane, but, and I can't say that I've created a new meta within any of the killers I've played, but it's just kind of insane to see. And it is the most recent examples. I have to agree with that. That is literally what has occurred. And I brought those two examples up because those were the two things I've noticed over the course of my time within the months playing the game. That's what I've seen, like a big increase in finesse and dramaturgy, a big increase of syringes.
I really don't think it can be argued that the dramaturgy meta kind of appeared out of nowhere. You literally never saw it before creators started talking about it all of a sudden, and then pairing it with finesse, which is a combo you see in basically every game now, just makes for some of the most boring and uninteractive chases from the killer's point of view. And this perk combo has been receiving a lot of complaints lately, to the point where it's likely some balance changes will happen sometime soon. And hey, of course, it's not just things on the survivor side that have this issue. There have been plenty of times when a content creator has talked about a specific build killers could use, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. And a recent example of that would be Thrill of the Hunt right after its buff. It was absolutely everywhere after its buff.
You know, I completely forgot to mention this because I personally never really used that, like, any totems around that point. I just never found it that interesting. But I do remember that also being meta for a little while, and then I knew that the nerf was coming very quickly. But it was cool, you know, to see that, at least, like, to be able to kind of see, like, hey, there is a killer meta now, at least for once. Only because from the time I've been playing the game, it's been a lot of, like, very oppressive survivor metas. So it was interesting to kind of see the reverse, which was an interesting sight to like I've said. And that, of course, got quickly addressed, which I find very interesting, because when it came to survivor metas, like, they would wait very, very long, especially when Made for This Resilience was a combo. That they took months to fix that, but when it came to the killer totem builds thing, that got knocked out within a month, I think, or less. I can't remember exactly the time frame, but it was very fast in comparison. So it could just be because behavior is taking a lot more time to actually improve their game in a lot more of a responsive and quick manner compared to what they used to, or it could be just the fact that there's more people crying about the totems than there would have been about the survivor meta, potentially.
And a less recent example would be the Overbrine Eruption meta, also known as the Gen Kick meta.
Oh yes, this is, I was actually playing the game at this point too. But, I can't remember if I used it often. I think I did to some degree. And I think this is why we ended up getting the mechanic with the gen kicking thing, where you only get 8 kicks or something like that. Or yeah. And then that's why Call of Brine got nerfed too. Call of Brine has completely got nerfed because of that as well. Eruption got changed as well. And I do remember that. But I will say that those metas are pretty spaced out, I gotta say. Which is pretty funny to think about. But I do remember that, yeah. I don't remember using it that often. I think I used it a few times, but I never really used it much. I think I was grinding Ghostface at that point, so I was just using the builds I like to use on him, and I never really was 3-genning that much with him.
However, that's not to say that these content creators necessarily did anything wrong. It could even be argued that all they're doing is bringing attention to something that was already problematic and unhealthy, which adds urgency to behavior to make potential changes. The issue is, some people take it too far and it's not always that well-meaning. And there are times when the Otzdarva Effect comes into play in some of the most irresponsible ways possible from some content creators. And I will say this right now, none of the creators I've talked about so far, whether that be Otz, Hens, or anyone else, has done anything like what I'm about to talk about. The aforementioned creators have always been responsible. You see, every so often there will end up being a game-breaking bug or exploit in DBD, and rather than do the responsible thing and report it to behavior, some creators see the low-hanging fruit for low-effort content and just put it out there for everyone to see, even teaching them how to do it, which only serves to make people use and abuse these exploits. Now, you might want to make the argument that they're just trying to bring awareness to it, like the creators I spoke about earlier in this video. And no, just no. There is a clear difference between showcasing something that's insanely overpowered or unhealthy versus something that is basically cheating. I'll go ahead and give you a couple of the best examples of this happening over the years. Number one would be the Wake Up bug. This was a bug that occurred in 2019 when the perk Wake Up didn't just apply to exit gates. The bug in question caused the action speed bonus to apply to literally every objective-based action. Generators, healing, cleansing totems, everything. A flat speed bonus to all of it. It was absolutely broken, and wouldn't you know it, it was all over Twitter, it was all over YouTube, and...
Are we sure it's still not in the game now? Are you sure it's not base kit? Are we sure? Can we confirm that this isn't base kit? Can we confirm this? Because it feels like it's still here, man. I gotta say, these gen speeds are crazy. Okay. No, I'm kidding. But I wasn't playing the game at this point, so I never knew. I never knew that this was a thing. But that's crazy. Wow. Wake Up applying to other things besides the gate is a crazy thought.
One was using it because everyone was talking about it, which is really funny because it's a perk that no one was using before this. Number two is one that most people are familiar with. Even if you weren't around back then, you've probably heard horror stories about it. And I'm talking about the Infinite Mend Legion. You see, around 6 years ago, there was a bug with Legion where if you ran both of his rare and very rare blade add-ons, it would basically create a situation for survivors where they'd have to spend an infinite amount of time mending. This bug was so busted, and because this was also a time before there was a kill switch in the game, so they couldn't just disable certain things, behavior was actually banning killer players for doing this. And rightfully so. It was absolutely ridiculous. Now tell me, what do all the exploits I just mentioned have in common? All of them were milked for low effort content, and as a consequence were abused by thousands of people to the point where you saw them every game until they were fixed, which in some cases took months, and in many cases, because this is before the kill switch was a thing in DBD, we just had to wait. And the crazy part is, these two examples weren't even the only ones. There was the breakdown bug, the flashlight and locker bug, the hook tech. I could go on and on about things that certain content creators have just irresponsibly made videos teaching people how to do that ruined the game for months on end for people. So this begs the question, aside from the nerds who teach people how to do exploits, which is never okay, is the Otzdarva Effect really a big problem? Are content creators indirectly ruining the game? Do they bring unnecessary attention to certain aspects of the game that become issues when they weren't issues before? You see, for me, it's a double-edged sword, because I think it could be argued that content creators at large can bring attention to certain things that otherwise wouldn't have been noticed on such a wide scale, and a lot of the time it ends up in things getting nerfed or changed in some way. But is it really a bad thing? I would almost say that content creators simply speed up something that was inevitably going to happen.
I will try to respond to the question here. Are content creators ruining Dead by Daylight? No. Content creators at least are able to bring attention to things that would probably have not been really patched out initially. Now, it is a varied question, but obviously the main thing to focus on is that overall, the objective of the content creator would most likely be bring attention to this thing. And how other people decide to use that is a completely case-by-case thing. If the person is deciding, hey, I'm gonna show them how it's done and exploit it, and then try to go off of that, then I'm like, okay, like now you can see where the issue lies. However, if it's like, hey, I'm not gonna show you how you do it, but this is what it does, and we need to bring this to their attention, report it if you see it, yada yada yada, just to try to at least be like, hey, it's just solely because of boom, report this, let's all try to come together and report it, then obviously, you know, okay, this is a good thing to do. However, like you mentioned, it's, you know, sometimes, you know, sometimes there's bad apples in the bunch, and you can't really do much besides just kind of point it out, you know, and be like, damn, like that's not good.
I would almost say that content creators simply speed up something that was inevitably going to happen anyway in most cases. Because at the end of the day, they didn't figure out all of these techs and perk combos because they're content creators. They figured them out because they play the game just like everyone else. I'd also say that in most cases, just because people aren't aware of a tech or a perk combo, it doesn't mean it's healthy for the game. But I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think content creators ruin the game for everyone else? Do you think the Otzdarva Effect is a problem? Let me know in the comments below, because honestly, there's valid points that could be made for both.
So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you want to see the full video, links will be in the description for that. And I want to know what you guys think. Put it in the comment section. What do you guys think about this topic? What do you guys think? Like, you know, you could pick anything from the video, but mainly I want to know you guys' thoughts on the Otzdarva Effect. What do you guys think? Is this like an actual thing that it happens? Are content creators to blame? Stuff like that. So let's have a discussion in the comment section. Watch the original video. I'll see you guys. Sub to Pally as well. Sub to me. Support the channel with the links in the description. Follow on Twitch. We play DVD live. I'll see you guys in the next one.